Nightly News starts now.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. Brian is off tonight. I'm Lester Holt. In a few hours, America will welcome a new year, and it will be quickly followed by the end of what seems like the longest build-up to a presidential primary season in recent memory. Iowa voters who all year have been knee-deep in presidential hopefuls, pollsters, and reporters will finally have their say when they sit down to pick their candidates on Thursday. And that leaves 2 more full days before the candidates try to break through in a race that between Democrats and Republicans features no fewer than 5 frontrunners, meaning the next sound you are likely to hear will be that of the stops being pulled out. Let's begin in Des Moines with NBC's Lee Cowan. Lee, good evening.
Good evening, Lester. You know, at this point in the campaign, really, the safe bet is just to stay on message, don't make any headlines, just get through Thursday. But if that was Mike Huckabee's strategy today, he seemed a bit off point. Mike Huckabee gave the visual cue to the way most campaigns are feeling these days here, that it's an all-out race to Thursday's finish line. But he confounded reporters when he announced that he would help clean up this race by not airing a recently taped negative ad against Mitt Romney.
But it's got to start somewhere. And so it might as well start here and might as well start with me.
That all sounded pretty good, but he showed the media the very ad he promised to hold.
Romney's record?
Yes.
Over $700 million in new taxes.
He has benefited from being the non-politician in this field. Today's press conference made him very much look like a regular politician.
Mitt Romney called it all puzzling and confusing. His campaign called it a meltdown.
And I know how to win.
It was a moment that stood out on what otherwise would have been a same speech, different crowd kind of day. Most campaigns are focused on sealing the deal with undecided voters.
John Edwards' campaign.
And getting them out to caucus.
And of course, I'm going to want to encourage them to support Barack.
Barack Obama boasts the largest and most technically advanced get out the vote of any candidate, a key most agree to winning here. But Rudolph Giuliani has placed his bets elsewhere. His campaign has focused virtually all its attention on bypassing the early states in favor of a big delegate count later, like in Florida. But that's a risk.
This year, this process is so front-loaded, so much is going to happen in the next month that I think candidates who did not take Iowa seriously may feel that they did so at their peril.
Now, it's not, Lester, that the other campaigns aren't worried about those big primaries coming up in February. They are. In fact, they're all hoping that they can come out of these early states with a big lead going into those primaries. But the fact is, Lester, things are so tight that there is a very real possibility that those candidates could go into those big primaries just as tight as they are now. Lester?
Lee Cowan. Lee, thanks. And while the entire political universe is revolving around Iowa tonight, back here in New York, there's a fresh round of speculation that this city's billionaire mayor may be getting ready to mount an independent run for the White House. Here's NBC's Mike Taibbi.
New York's 2-term mayor spent the morning signing quality-of-life bills while getting a few laughs.
Getting tough on public lewdness is a great way to kick off a presidential campaign, first of all.
Are you running?
But the idea of a Bloomberg candidacy is no joke, especially to those who say the two-party system is broken and needs to be replaced.
The two parties barely talk to each other in Washington, much less find common ground for successful and sustainable change.
Bloomberg was a longtime Democrat turned Republican mayor turned independent, who's kept company with others with an independent streak, from Senators Joe Lieberman and Barack Obama to Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger.
We're here not to represent parties. We're here to represent the people.
Bloomberg says he's only going to Oklahoma to meet with others who object to what he calls Washington's hyper-partisanship, a group including former Democratic Senator Sam Nunn and David Boren, and Republican stalwarts Senator Chuck Hagel and former New Jersey Governor Christie Whitman. Whitman says she believes Bloomberg won't run if he can't win, that he won't just be a spoiler. But Bloomberg has a new political website, has placed political ads in some early primary states, and Time Magazine's Joe Klein says you never know.
And so I think when Mike Bloomberg looks at all these other people and then he looks in the mirror in the morning, he says, I'm better than those guys.
It's a long shot for sure. Ross Perot in '92 won 19 million votes, but not one state's electoral votes, 0.
But being the popular mayor of New York doesn't count for everything in those parts of the country that are not New York.
But aides to the mayor have been quoted as saying that sometime in April, in time to start spending the hundreds of his own millions it'll take to even get on the ballot in all 50 states, he'll decide whether he's in or out. Mike Taibbi, NBC News, New York.
The latest reading from this country's troubled housing market. Existing home sales is not as bad as the news we got about new home sales last week. Sales edged up a bit, 0.4% last month, but the picture is darker compared to last year. Sales were down 20% year over year, with prices falling 3.3% nationwide. Let's turn to Pakistan now, and the latest on the controversy surrounding Benazir Bhutto's assassination. A new video has surfaced of Thursday's attack that appears to contradict the government's account of how she died. Also in question tonight, whether elections set for January 8th will take place as scheduled. NBC's Ned Holt has our report from Islamabad.
The video is shot from behind Benazir Bhutto's car. There's a crowd, but no sign of a government security detail to push people back. The tape shows a clean-cut man in sunglasses firing a handgun at Bhutto, and her head and scarf then apparently jerking with the impact of bullets, followed by a suicide bomber's explosion. No one denies that a gunman fired at Bhutto and that a suicide bomber then detonated an explosive. But the hospital medical report says simply the cause of death was a wound, an open head injury with depressed skull fracture. Initially, the government said she died of bullet wounds, then on Friday changed its story to say it was the force of the bomb blast that slammed her head into the edge of her armored car's sunroof. Bhutto's supporters say the changing story and the video raise questions about government deception. Bhutto's husband ruled out an autopsy.
You've got a doctor who's seen her dead, who's seen the wound, who tried to save her. So all that is evidence. You don't need another autopsy.
Which means the cause of death may never be definite.
This all seems rather bizarre. It seems rather clumsy and ham-handed, and unfortunately it raises many more questions than it answers.
On the election front, more turmoil. The National Election Commission has delayed until tomorrow a decision on whether to go ahead with key parliamentary elections now scheduled for a week from Tuesday. With 9 of the commission's offices burned down in weekend rioting and security fears still a major issue, the government of Bhutto's rival, President Pervez Musharraf, is considering delaying the vote by weeks or months. But Bhutto's party, now officially led by her 19-year-old college student son, but controlled by her husband, is demanding elections take place as scheduled. They're counting on a massive sympathy vote. The threat, if there's a delay...
Chaos on the streets. Absolute chaos on the streets again, and we cannot take any more chaos.
With this country at such a dangerous crossroads, stability is the thing that most Pakistanis and the U.S. crave. Lester?
Ned Holt in Islamabad, thank you. Tonight, an island of stability in volatile East Africa is being torn apart in the wake of a disputed presidential election. As NBC's Martin Fletcher reports, the riots now rocking Kenya show no signs of subsiding.
Another of America's key allies in the war against terror faces chaos today. Kenya. Tens of thousands took to the streets to accuse President Mwai Kibaki of stealing Thursday's election. The result, chaos. At least 185 people killed as protests spread across the country. Police told reporters they had orders to shoot to kill. We will keep fighting, said the opposition leader Raila Odinga, who believes he should now be president of Kenya.
Democracy is expensive, and we are prepared to pay the ultimate price to liberate this country from the shackles of a cabal of dictators.
The tension is fueled by tribal rivalries. President Kibaki, beginning his second term, belongs to the largest tribe, the Kikuyu. The opposition leader to the next biggest, the Luo. They've long accused the Kikuyu of monopolizing political power. They're looting each other's shops and businesses. Thousands tried to break out of Nairobi's crowded slums, but were beaten back by water cannons and tear gas. The opposition claims of a rigged and stolen election were given careful support by the American ambassador.
There seemed to be tampering with some of the vote tabulation reporting forms.
President Kibaki called for reconciliation and peace after yesterday's swearing-in ceremony. Instead, the opposition has called for a rally of 1 million people in the capital on Thursday. A bad week for democracy in Africa. Martin Fletcher, NBC News.
When Nightly News continues on this New Year's Eve, the booming business of higher education online. But let the student beware, not all cyber universities are created equal. And later, a look back at some of the notable names and faces of those who died in 2007. First, a look at how Australia ushered in the new year with a spectacular show at the Sydney Harbour Bridge. NBC News in depth tonight. Online education. Its popularity is soaring, creating a $6.2 billion industry. 35% of all higher education institutions now offer online degrees. But not all cyber degrees are created equal, as we hear from NBC's Rahima Ellis.
When Sean Anderson's bosses at Lockheed Martin told him an MBA would increase his chances for promotion, he got busy and found an online program from the University of Phoenix that fit his hectic schedule, including flexibility to study whenever he could and regular contact with professors by email or phone.
I travel a lot, so anywhere there's internet access, I could access school and I could really keep up.
Some 3.5 million Americans are in college online. That's almost 2 million more than 5 years ago. But as more and more working adults turn to online education as an option, experts say there's a problem. The number of phony online institutions is growing too. One study estimated several hundred counterfeit diploma websites generated about $500 million a year selling phony diplomas. Those diplomas are used throughout the business world and even became a problem for the federal government. A GAO investigation revealed that 463 federal employees got degrees from online diploma mills or other unaccredited schools, some at government expense. 257 worked for the Department of Defense, 12 for the Department of Homeland Security, 9 for NASA. As a result of that investigation, the government no longer accepts unaccredited online schools.
All the evidence points to degree mills as a growth industry, especially in relation to the growing demand for higher education.
And that makes some businesses cautious of online education.
We as employers have a bias and value the traditional campus-earned degrees.
Still, online education is booming and gaining legitimacy.
Online education is not something that's going to go away. As a matter of fact, I think it's going to become more pervasive.
Sean Anderson agrees. With his online MBA, he got his promotion. Rahima Ellis, NBC News, New York.
This last day of 2007 finds Atlanta just shy of its driest year since records have been kept. A series of storms over the last 12 days pushed the city's total rainfall less than 1/10 of an inch over that 1954 record. A new study in the journal Neurology shows that individuals with restless leg syndrome are twice as likely to have a stroke or heart disease. Researchers at Harvard Medical School found the involuntary leg movements are associated with substantial increases in blood pressure and heart rate. A quick look at Wall Street now on this last trading day of 2007, a down day to round out the year across the board. And for the year, the Dow gained 6.4%, the Nasdaq was up 9.8%, and the S&P 500 finished with a gain of 3.5%. And when we come back, tough questions about the management of San Francisco Zoo after the deadly Christmas Day tiger attack. First, look at how they rang in 2008 in Beijing. In San Francisco, the zoo where a tiger escaped from its enclosure and killed a teenager and left 2 other people hurt Christmas Day is set to reopen on Thursday. But there are more questions tonight about the zoo's recent track record. Here's NBC's George Lewis.
Zoo officials have stopped commenting on the attack, saying only that when the zoo reopens Thursday, the big cat enclosure will remain closed indefinitely.
We've got a number of unanswered questions, and until we can answer all those questions, it's too soon to say to you, to say to the public that the zoo is safe.
The 2 brothers who survived the attack and initially refused to cooperate with police had nothing to say as they were released from the hospital over the weekend. This as the friends and family of 17-year-old Carlos Souza, who died from the mauling, gathered for a candlelight vigil and heard from the victim's father, Carlos Sr. This attack is the latest in a long list of incidents for the San Francisco Zoo. 3 of the zoo's 4 elephants have died since March of 2004. A hippopotamus died in May after a move that some zoo employees said was bungled. A year ago, the zoo failed to warn visitors that some parakeets carried a contagious bird disease that can be passed on to family pets. The executive vice president of the Humane Society of the United States says that one problem is poor enforcement of federal regulations regarding zoos.
You have the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which enforces the Animal Welfare Act, and only has a few dozen inspectors to deal with thousands of zoos and circuses.
Late today, the zoo announced it has invited the Association of Zoos and Aquariums to inspect the redesign of the big cat enclosure to protect both the public and the tigers. George Lewis, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Sarah Jane Moore, who fired a shot at President Gerald Ford in 1975, was released from prison today. Moore, who is now 77 years old, spent 32 years of a life sentence behind bars. She tried to shoot President Ford in San Francisco 2 weeks after an attempt on his life by a member of the Manson family in nearby Sacramento. We'll take a break. We'll be back in just a moment with a look back at some of those who left us in 2007. But first, New Year's Eve in Moscow's Red Square. Despite a recent drop in violence across Iraq, 2007 has proved to be the deadliest of the war for American troops in that country and in Afghanistan. 899 American servicemen and women were killed in Iraq, while 110 died on duty in Afghanistan. And tonight, as the year ends, we take some time to remember others no longer with us.
When I look back on my life, I would rather say I shouldn't have done that rather than I should have done that.
Almost everyone agrees that we have reached an environmental crisis.
I feel very, very emotional coming back to my country.
I feel saving Pakistan by saving democracy is worth putting my life on the line.
When you write a book, you try to create a spell, and you either succeed or you don't.
If ever I would leave you, how could it be in springtime?
Mr. Nixon very kindly waived any idea of what my questions might be, and I appreciate that, sir.
That's always my rule. I know it won't do any good to impose any rules, so you just go ahead.
One that says, have you ever been to Walla Walla? No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
It was the nearest thing to heaven. You were there.
Astronaut Walter Shirovich reports all systems are go.
Good morning, everyone. It's now tomorrow here on NBC.
Would you please welcome my first guest tonight, America's foremost daredevil, in fact, the world's foremost daredevil, Mr. Evel Knievel. Evel?
I'm going to stick my neck out as far as I can and have a ball and let her roll.
The old hometown looks the same as I step down from the train.
Hot one. All right, good. Let's go. Try it again.
And it's intercepted by Sean Taylor.
Gone but not forgotten. That's our broadcast for this Monday night and for this year. Thank you for being with us. I'm Lester Holt. Brian Williams will be back here tomorrow evening. For all of us at NBC News, thank you for watching and have a safe and wonderful new year. Good night.